Okay, I'll call this public caucus to order. Tonight as our guests we have State Representative Kyle Mullins and State Representative Thom Welby, and also Bill Davis from Representative Mullins' office and Ann Drempy from Representative Welby's office. So, I mean, if you want to start with you, any updates we have from Harrisburg, and then we could go from there.
If I could just mention, I'm sorry, I just wanted to bring up that this was some time ago, I think back in the fall, that a resident had come during citizens' participation and brought up how she wanted to see more communication between council and the city and other elected officials, and so it was at that point that I felt that it would be great to have you both in here tonight to just give us updates on what's going on in the state legislature, things that could affect us here in the city of Scranton, and I just thought it would be a great way for council to be able to have better communication with those in the state legislature.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And I don't know, I guess just two housekeeping questions. One, is it okay to remove the mask while speaking?
We just keep it all the same and just keep them on all the time.
That sounds good. Okay. And I didn't know if we were as long as I'm not bucking protocol by jumping in before a Pledge of Allegiance or anything. I know we're in a caucus and rather not a meeting. So provided those two things are handled, thank you so much for hosting us and with your patience. I know this was rescheduled a couple times, and I appreciate your understanding very much, and it's really good to be here. I'm fresh off the road from Harrisburg. My first day of my first year on the House Appropriations Committee, to which I hope I can use that level of appointment and proximity to the budget process to continue to benefit the city of Scranton and the surrounding areas. So just by way of brief introductions, Kyle Mullins, state representative in the 112th district, which entails part of Southside all the way up to the borough of Archbald. This is I'm midway through my second term. Hoping for a third, and it's been a real pleasure and honor to serve the city of Scranton previously with then Representative and now Senator Flynn, still of course overlapping with the senator, and now with our newest member of the delegation, but someone of course who's no stranger to governing and public service. Locally, Thom Welby, and we also couldn't do these jobs without our very capable friends and coworkers in our offices and our operations, Angela Rempe and Bill Davis. Again, two people who are not strangers to you, and I again hope that this can be a routine and regular occasion to have an open dialogue to discuss city priorities and make up for some lost time that COVID certainly impacted us with. So, Thom, you have any introductory?
Well, of course, it's Thom Welby, and I've worked with a few of you before, actually all of you before. My 8.5 years working with State Rep, now Senator Marty Flynn, and now I'm excited to be able to serve the 113th as the rep, and Representative Mullins, he's a little modest about today. He was in session in the appropriations hearings down in Harrisburg, and I was watching quite a bit of it online as much as I could. And it was a long day for the rep, and he's going back for that to continue tomorrow, and for the next 4 weeks they're going to be having appropriations hearings on all the different departments within the Commonwealth, and we're excited to have Representative Mullins as well as Senator Flynn on the appropriations committees in Harrisburg, which, as you know, carries a little bit of weight that can help our city. We've had tremendous help over the last almost 30 years with our state representatives and senators in Harrisburg, going back actually quite a bit when we first went into distressed status and recently came out. And while it was disappointing that we were in session both the Senate and the House. When the party was held up here, the, so to speak, mortgage was burned, but we down there in Harrisburg celebrated as much as you all did up here, and hopefully you won't have to call on the state senators or representatives for anything like that again. What you have called on us in the past, we're really happy to help with, and that is, in particular for me, working with Representative Flynn, was working with you on grants. And your previous grant writer, Maggie McLean Perry, was just absolutely fabulous. She did a fabulous job with the city, and we were really excited to be able to put a little extra weight on the Commonwealth and all of the different departments that award these grants on behalf of the city, and we're continuing that now with your new grant writer, Sherry Fravel, who also is an outstanding worker and working really hard with her on several grant proposals that she's working with right now. And we're excited about continuing that, and just want you to know that actually there's a few that I talked with Sherry about today that we're working on, and we're not going to let up with that. The district for the 113th is going to change in the near future, but that's I won't be here for that, but we're still excited to have continued representation in Lackawanna County and in the city of Scranton going forward with some fabulous people down in Harrisburg, and I'm proud for now to be one of them. I'm not sure if there are some things you want to talk about. Both Kyle and I have been involved in the city with a lot of things outside of our own state responsibilities, doing some things on our own. Starting with Representative Marty Flynn, who, as you know, can be somewhat aggressive about some different situations, and one of his pet peeves was graffiti that the city was experiencing quite a bit of. And Marty went out on his own and covered up the graffiti on his own, and then I went out, and our other staff members went out. But we're happy and proud to be members of our community, and whatever it takes, whether it's down in Harrisburg or things we're doing here, we hope to continue a good, strong relationship with you.
And I think Representative Welby hit something that you all should be extremely proud of, having been here and been part of it, the exit from Act 47, something that, how many city councils and how many mayors and how many state legislators have come and gone over that period. And you were able to be here and help see the city through to exit from that program. It's the representative mentioned whoever future representation will be. The maps and the districts, the redistricting process continues to play out. If the final approved reapportionment commission map is ultimately blessed by the state Supreme Court, I sadly would not be running and representing the city of Scranton any longer, but it's important to know a couple of things. That for all of my time in office and previously as the legislative director to former Senator John Blake, I had a deep affinity for the city of Scranton and understood that our regional economy is directly tied to the fate, the survival, the success of the city of Scranton. And regardless of what happens in future redistricting or territorial representation, you've got two public servants here who recognize and have long recognized and appreciated what the success and vitality of Scranton means to the area. Without a vibrant Scranton, you don't have a vibrant Lackawanna County. And that's something that remains a central tenet of my regional representation, and that's important to know going forward. So, you mentioned the exit from Act 47, and going back to my time as a legislative director, I was exceptionally, I was well versed in the shortcomings of Act 47 as it previously stood, and understood that we needed to give municipalities wishing to exit, not only a clear timeline, but also the tools and the mechanisms to do so, to pass and approve a fair tax policy, to give municipalities more than just some arbitrary deadline which to exit, but rather tools to implement. And I'm exceptionally proud of the city and the economic development intermediaries that advised the city through some incredibly challenging periods, and that we now see it having exited distress. That's a big deal. That's a big deal in the bond markets. That's a big deal for your taxpayers, most importantly. It's important to mention that although there's the city school district has a school council, and they are experiencing challenges of their own. We understand in Harrisburg that just as the city of Scranton's economic vitality has a direct impact on our regional economy, we understand that you can't have a strong city without making sure that its school district is given all of the tools it needs to be strong. And the fact that Harrisburg for too long has set underfunded school districts like Scranton up to fail, that is something that Representative Welby and I joined together and introduced legislation to help to correct those inequities, and augmented and fair funding for our underfunded school districts remains a priority of mine in Harrisburg and through this budget process, because there's no separation. Your fate is linked, and remember, you serve the same tax base, the same taxpayers. We need strong schools to make sure that we have a strong city. So that's certainly something I think worth being said. Although I'm aware I'm before City Council and not before the school board. That's certainly something to note that we've got our eye on.
Is there anything that you wanted to address specifically with us, that you want our impression on something, or want us to pay particular attention to moving forward, other than, of course, our grant opportunities and properly funding our school district and all the school districts across the Commonwealth?
I just have a couple of points. Representative Mullins, no matter where the lines are, we're still going to call you, so I appreciate that offer.
Right. My number won't change.
It will just add to the numbers we have in our favor. In terms of Scranton's success being the region's success, I couldn't agree more. And is there any movement in Harrisburg in regards to fair funding of school districts? I know that there's a trial ongoing now, but in terms of the budget process, is there any will to actually close that gap?
Limited, definitely, and with some level up funding, the governor has set aside funds that he intends to see being used, particularly for the underfunded school districts, but also to step to complete full fair funding that is facing a brick wall challenge to it, but more and more representatives and senators are, I believe, seeing the need that it is our responsibility, it is our legal constitutional obligation to fairly fund our school districts. I got involved in this back in the late 90s with Stand for Children and then Good Schools Pennsylvania, and we lobbied for 2 years just to get a costing out study done, and then after it was done, it sat in a drawer for 3 years before it was even looked at. It's been a long, hard challenge, and to understand the logistics of it, you have to keep in mind what other school districts, other senators, other representatives are facing. Under the funding formula right now, it's almost like the assessments that we have, the property tax assessments. About 1/3 are going to lose money, about 1/3 are going to gain money, and about 1/3 will stay the same. And you have to visualize those school district representatives and senators who live in the districts who are going to have the state cut the funding that goes to them locally. They know that if the state cuts their funding, their budget stays the same, they have to make up that difference, as Scranton is now in the reverse. They have to make up that difference by raising their local taxes. And how many state representatives or senators are going to go home and say, oh, by the way, I just voted to cut your funding so that we can raise your local taxes? And that's part of what the challenge is in Harrisburg, the reality of knowing that a lot of these senators and representatives don't want to do that to their own constituents. But it is literally, I think, and Representative Mullins has been there a lot longer than me. I've only been there for 2 or 3 months. But I do think that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a locomotive bearing down on us, that more and more are agreeing that we have to bite the bullet, we have to get it done. But for now, while I look at it as a Band-Aid, Governor Wolf has set aside funding to help take care of school districts like Scranton, and I believe that part of it will be done with an infusion of capital immediately.
And I'm not sure, we saw a significant augmentation in the basic education subsidy last year toward the level up proposal, as well as us maintaining that hold harmless provision, which, Representative Welby mentioned that no one really wants, of course, in any of these proposals to pull funding from one place, however well-funded it is, to benefit the other. The best, at the risk of oversimplifying it, the best thing you can do is to, as a state, step up and make the necessary investment to the public education system broadly. Now, again, to reiterate Tom's point, the governor once again proposed a significant increase toward the level up proposal. It's budget. State budgets are always a starting point. So I don't get overly dismayed or excited until the ink is dry on the final state spending plan. I do believe that we are in a period of fiscal strength in our state when we should be doing these things, when we should be investing in our schools, not only to make sure that we're closing the inequity, the gap, the adequacy gap for our school children, but to make sure that we're providing enough resources and funding to remove things like lead and asbestos from our school buildings. Our school children deserve not only an education that is not basically they deserve an education that is one of quality, is a substantive one, and the quality of which is not determined by their zip code. All right, they shouldn't have to worry about. They should be worrying about their studies, about their outcomes, and not the risks of school strikes, lead and asbestos in our school districts. Absolutely. So I know it's not a firm answer, but I'm really hoping some combination of a crystal ball, being an optimist, and knowing that we have the resources and we should do the right thing at the end of the day in our state budget. I'm hoping that we can take a sizable swing at that. Yes. At that gap.
And the reason I ask is just, you did mention that, we do serve the same tax base. So though we're not directly, involved in the budgeting process with the school district, when they're underfunded and then it basically gets kicked down the road to local taxpayers, we take that into consideration too when we're developing our budget so that we, don't completely overburden, our taxpayers. I have a couple more, but does anyone else have any other questions on those?
I totally understand how it works or how it will work. Sorry, I do that all the time. I totally understand that for us to get more, a district has to give up what they've already been used to having and working with. And I appreciate that the governor's putting money aside. He does every year. We get money, finally get money at different, when we really need it or beg for it, we get it. But how much focus is on the formula itself to change the formula, or equalize it for everybody else. I mean, every year we get a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there, but that doesn't work. It's not working. So my question is, the formula, when is it going to change realistically? I mean, and is it really a focus on to change the formula, or just keep moving money around?
I'll give the, you guys are friends and you deserve an honest answer from your state representatives. The current fair funding formula that incremental new dollars have to flow through was passed, I believe, in the session of 2014. I could be wrong, applying to 2015 appropriations and beyond. That was a mighty lift. That was a Herculean lift to get entrenched Republican majority lawmakers to first agree and acknowledge that we have funding inequities across the state. They represent some of them. It's not all Democrats who represent some of them, and I'm sorry to be partisan about this, but at the end of the day, it comes down to votes. The two state representatives sitting before you have a joint bill that is actually targeted at that very formula, at making additional improvements and bringing additional fairness to that formula. He and I would vote for it tomorrow. We need additional buy-in, and not just from people of our party, of our ilk, okay? Beyond that, it becomes an electoral and caucus discussion and a matter of 102 votes. That being said, so real quick, let me just go back to reiterating how difficult it was to get to a point where we're even sending new money through a fair funding formula. In the near term, again, you deserve an honest take at this. In the near term, the best way to get toward a balanced, fair funding structure and formula is to continue to send more and more dollars into the basic education subsidy. Thus, the more dollars you send through in an incremental way over the prior years, you are getting closer and closer to true fairness that was arrived upon in a bipartisan way.
So do the other districts that already have enough.
Listen,
Won't the other districts that have enough, theirs increases too, their subsidy, during this process you speak of? Not necessarily. Their increases, and there are many. It's a very complicated and complex formula through certain through certain levers and functions of the funding formula. There are year after year a number of districts who will receive perhaps a lesser increase than they did the prior year. It has to do with tax effort, median income, a whole bunch of inputs to this funding formula. So the have-nots, the underfunded ones, through this fair funding formula, it was arrived upon that they would be getting greater steps or leaps toward what they're ultimately due. Our view by introducing that bill is it doesn't come fast enough.
And the money, while the school districts like Scranton and other districts in Lackawanna County as well would increase in the full fair funding, the other school districts won't receive more proportionately. They won't receive the same percentage increases that Scranton or Carbondale or some of the other districts will receive. But under the setup that they had tried to attempt to work at back in 2014 and 15, they won't receive less. Again, the formulas, as you all know, they're not based on strictly student numbers. They're based on abilities and learning problems that so many districts have. And in Scranton, I mean, it screams problems with, I believe we're at about 40 different languages that are spoken in the Scranton School District. And we have a lot of other issues that our students and our teachers, our educators face. And because of that, our costs are higher per student to help educate them and get them to the level that we need them at. And we're also looking at graduation rates. It's terrible to see some school districts, because of underfunding, they have a much higher dropout rate. And if we have school districts with a 20% dropout rate, a 75 and 80% graduation rate, where does that take us 10, 15, 20 years down the road as far as a society goes? We have to find a way to get everybody to agree to vote for this. And the way the governor has structured it, and a lot of the legislators are working on it, the school districts in need will get the proper and appropriate increased funding. The school districts that are not as much in need of it aren't going to get a lesser amount than they did previously, but they're not going to get a proportionate increase that Scranton and other districts would receive.
So can I oh, go ahead. Just real quickly, obviously 4 of us sitting here, 3 of which sat on the Scranton School Board. I was the former superintendent, and we intimately understand the need for fair funding for the school district. One of the things that I fought for when I was president of the Pennsylvania League of Urban Schools was fair funding, but we tried to really focus on cyber charter schools and that funding formula. When you think that's probably the easiest bucket to grab the money from, because think of what cyber charter schools, they can afford to do commercials. You go to Hershey Park, they're advertising at Hershey Park. They don't have heating bills, they don't have electric bills. Their electric bills, gas bills, no busing, no sports, but yet they still continue to get enormous amount of taxpayer dollars to support their programs. And quite frankly, they've been pulling teachers from our public schools because they can afford to pay higher salaries. To me, that's outrageous. And it's not that I'm totally against charter schools. I understand that charter schools have their niche and really can help support a lot of students that would fit that type of learning environment. But I know that as a former superintendent in 2 school districts and former principal in 3 school districts, our kids learn best when they're sitting in front of a teacher, when they're in the classroom, when they're in our schools. And the funding formula for cyber charter schools in particular, at least the physical charter schools, they actually have a building and the kids are there and they are teaching and learning, in front of the teacher. But I saw myself, when my kids sat home for a year learning online, it was terrible. It was not good. And my kids, I'll brag a little bit, they're pretty bright kids. And I feared for what those other students out there that didn't have the supports that my kids had. And my kids said they'd go to school every single day for 8 hours with the mask on as long as they can go to school, because they didn't learn near as much as they did when they're sitting in front of a teacher with their classmates and able to learn in that type of environment. So that being said, this cyber charter school funding formula needs to be corrected. And I know that's a big lift.
It's first and foremost, I've got a piece of legislation that I fully don't expect any majority lawmaker to move until we get to it, that would call for a costing out study, just so we could see the exact dollar amount, get access to that cost of how much charter and cyber charter schools cost the state, cost taxpayers. To your point, indeed. Charter schools, there's great charter schools, and then there's the other kind. All right, there are absolutely charter schools have a place, as you mentioned, in our educational system, but we should have a clearer, less inhibited view of their structure, their expenditures, and just how much they are costing our taxpayers. And that is every time that charter reform in any capacity has come up for a vote, I have and will continue to support those amendments, which are summarily dismissed by because we don't have 102 votes in Harrisburg. But outside of the building, I'm working hard to change that, too.
While we're on the subject, we have a pending lawsuit that I know Panther Valley and Wilkes-Barre School District are involved in. When myself and Mr. McAndrew were over at the Scranton School Board, we tried to get Scranton to sign on to that suit as well, but we were met with resistance for some reason. And I think when it ends, I think Scranton will probably benefit. Do you see an end in sight with that lawsuit, and do you see that helping the district and
So I-
Scranton?
that's what I referred to before. It's actually on trial
Yes.
right now.
Yeah, the fair funding suit currently before the courts, of course, are short of the legislature, short of the Republican majority in the State House and the State Senate, sending our fair funding bill or any number of other fair funding bills or fair funding, period, to the governor's desk for a signature. It may very well be I would hope that it would be a favorable ruling by the court that would force us to do the right thing and finally close that gap.
And there are those among us that feel that is the answer, that's the way for us to get it done. And there are those among us that feel that there is a fair possibility that that's going to be the outcome. And we hope so. And back to Mr. King, too, regarding the charter schools and some of the issues that exist there. It is something that's being looked at, and a lot of members of the legislature have been working on things, the legislation that Representative Mullins is working on, and there's legislation out there that would fix the rate for charter schools as well. I believe that one of the numbers they're looking at is $12,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood for tuition. There are some that are charging $20,000 and more, and some are, as you said, are doing a good job, but some border on criminal for the manner in which they do not educate our children. And it's good to see some of our school districts taking it upon themselves to develop their own charter schools to try to cut that off a little bit. But there is legislation that's being looked at, considered. We have some caucuses coming up to deal with it and to get more feedback and more information from the parents, from the teachers, and from the students as well.
Thank you. So we do only have 10 minutes before. I just have one final question. In terms of the American Rescue Act plan money, has the state developed a structure and/or process for how the state is going to spend its allocation?
Now, you mean currently, you mean the ARPA dollars or the most recently passed bipartisan infrastructure?
The ARPA dollars, and then I was going to ask.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. So those dollars already received or, ultimately due to our municipalities. I know there was some real question or, lingering uncertainty by municipalities, large and small. I heard from townships, I heard from cities, about just how can we get clearer guidance from the feds on how we could spend those dollars. So if there are a particular, if there are with any of those remaining dollars, if there are particular questions, I know we'd be happy to get answers and follow up to the council.
And some of the dollars that are at this point unaccounted for, and I'm not sure what the dollar amount is. It might be $2 billion or somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm not really sure, but some of that is intended to go toward the school funding. But we can certainly fight for any that's sitting around on the table for sure.
Thank you. And then in terms of the transportation funding, is there a structure set up on how?
As I understand, and we continue to receive briefings by not only PennDOT but the congressional our congressional delegation, Senator Casey and Representative Cartwright. There will be some funds I know distributed over a 5-year horizon on a formula basis, and there will also be those competitive dollars where Pennsylvania is competing with other projects around the country for those things. My point in a recent Zoom meeting with our regional transportation officials was, yes, we do have to assert ourselves as a Commonwealth, but then we've got to make sure that us in northeastern Pennsylvania, in need of significant transportation investments and infrastructure improvements, does not get crowded out to the, to our detriment, to the benefit of more populated parts of the state.
Does anyone else have any other questions, concerns?
No, I just, I wanted to say thank you for coming tonight. I want to keep the conversations going and open between council and you both. I, didn't have specific expectations for like where our conversation will go, but I am really glad to have talked about fair funding for the school district. That's clearly very important to all of our council and to the health of the city. So I appreciate your insight and updates on that. Thank you.
If I could just add one more thing, before, to augment a point made by Representative Welby about grants and things. So the way we view various grants, large and small, grant opportunities for municipalities and other entities is these are state dollars, these are tax dollars that we've all got to kick in, right? It's our view, and we take it as an aggressive, we take our responsibility to be aggressive to return those dollars here quite seriously, because whether it's a RACP application or investment for the building, the city hall that we currently sit in, which we both advocated for strongly, an improvement project to a main corridor, to investing in our schools. Every dollar that we are able to fight for and return to the people we represent is one less tax dollar that a school or any other taxing body would have to consider. So, we understand that although you have exited from distress, that doesn't mean that city or any other municipality's finances are flush. You still have to live within your means and keep our city vibrant and moving forward. And so we understand that that's a responsibility, not just for you who all have taken the leap of public service, which I appreciate. You're really on the front lines of our democracy, and there's probably days of yours that are far tougher than ours. But we want to be an advocate for you, so some of those decisions at a local level perhaps are easier, but most importantly, easier on our taxpayers.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any? Thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate it. I'm sure we could sit here and talk for 3 more hours about some of these issues.
You know where to find us. That's right. You know where to find us.
But thank you so much for coming in. We really do appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And, we'll be in touch.
And if you have any other follow-up, something you didn't think of, just don't be shy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
We
very much.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We'll take a 2-minute break, and then we'll start our meeting at 6:30. I'd like to call this public meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild?
Here?
Mr. McAndrew?
Present?
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
I would like to make a motion to remove items 7B and 8A from tonight's agenda.
Second?
On the question,
On the question, is there any reason we should hold these off on an eighth order as we have in the past, in case they come back at any point in time, or these are going to be cleared indefinitely?
it's my understanding, based off the request that was made by the city solicitor, that they will not be coming back because they did request for them to be removed.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved. Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Wait, I won't. I would like to make a motion to remove item
No,
7B.
you just did that one. No?
Oh, the temporary chair. I read the wrong one. I still do.
You don't need that one.
All right, I'm sorry.
Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, minutes of the Civil Service Commission meeting held January 11th, 2022.
Are there any comments on the third order item? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I have a quick one. So this Saturday, February 19th, Divine Mercy over in Manuka section of Scranton is having a Divine Mercy platter takeout dinner, pre-sale only. Tickets are available for our famous Divine Mercy platter, which consists of 2 piggies, pierogies, alushki, and kabasi, which will be held on Saturday, February 19th from 12 to 3. This is takeout only and is pre-sale only, so the tickets are $15 and can be purchased at the parish office during regular business hours. That is all I have.
Anyone else have any announcements? I just have 2 real quick. I just want to clarify a comment I made last week regarding the land bank. So with the OEC director, it used to be Linda Abley, but then it moved on to the treasurer, and also Marion Gatto is the other representative on the land bank that was, it was appointed by a previous position, and then she was reappointed by this administration to the land bank. So I just wanted to clarify that I misspoke on that last week. Another announcement I have, I got an update that from the tax office and also from the administration, just to give some reminders, since real estate and refuse bills all in one are arriving in mailboxes. They want to remind people for in-person payment methods that taxpayers paying with checks at the Lackawanna County Government Center are required to utilize the drop box in the vestibule of the building. All payments made via the drop box will receive a receipt in the mail. It will be accessible Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. through 4:30 p.m. Taxpayers paying with cash will be permitted to enter the single tax office to make their payments. Social distancing will be enforced and masks are required. Taxpayers who mail their tax payments should include a stamped, self-addressed envelope to receive a receipt. Online payment methods are listed on the STO website at scrantontaxoffice.org. In terms of the refuse fee payment and exoneration procedure, the single tax office is collecting the refuse fee for the city of Scranton, and it's included in the tax bill. The city and school district real estate taxes cannot be paid without the refuse fee. City, school district, and refuse fee can be paid quarterly using the coupons at the bottom of the bill. Quarterly payments do not include county taxes. No other partial payments will be accepted. Taxpayers who believe they are eligible for an exoneration of any part of their refuse fee should contact the City of Scranton's Treasury Bureau. Applications are on the city's website or at the treasurer's office. All refund requests will be processed in December of 2022 or January of 2023, once sufficient proof that a vacancy has existed for the full calendar year. And also, advanced exonerations will not be granted. This was a request made by the tax collector and the administration to announce tonight. If no one else has any announcements, Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
First on the list is Joan Hodawanitz.
Joan Hodawanitz, city resident. First, some nice stuff. I don't talk about the library often enough, but I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of this awful weather, so it's time to have fun. Tomorrow, Wednesday at 2 p.m., the library will be showing a free movie, Dune, a science fiction thriller, which is up for 10 Oscars. So it's free, 2 p.m., bring your own popcorn. And Sunday is family mini golf. We did this in January of 2021. It was hysterically funny. Bring your kids, bring yourself. It's 18 holes of golf in the Scranton Public Library and the Children's Library. And what they've done is they set up the holes through the stacks, and the kids love it. It's $5 for children 12 and younger, and older children, it's $10. And all the money goes to children's programs. So if you want to get the tickets for that, you can call 348-3000 and press the pound sign, and they'll help you out. So get out and enjoy yourself, so you don't have to have any more of this awful weather. My audit, where is it?
We've still not received the audit.
Okie dokie. You know, actually, they could do two years together, and you could get a twofer at this rate. 5B, the zoning ordinance. Very long document, so I didn't read it very closely, but I scanned it, and two things popped up in my imagination. One was, there must have been maybe upwards of 50 words on stormwater management, and I don't know what they're thinking, but somehow there's got to be an impact on zoning with stormwater management. So hopefully, you know, somebody is looking at that issue. And the other thing was, I saw there were two sections which addressed gas stations, you know, about how far they're set off and pumps and this, that, and the other thing. But I bet you 10 years from now, there'll be more electric vehicles than gas-powered vehicles. I didn't see a word about charging stations. Now, I live downtown in Samters. That building has 24 apartments. I'm the only tenant that doesn't own and drive a car. All the other tenants do. They park on the street. 10 years from now, when there are more electric vehicles than gas-powered vehicles, where are our charging stations going to be? All these downtown apartment buildings. You're going to have to plan for that, but there's not a word about it. And I think, you know, that's a major oversight. I saw in the paper that our city treasurer, Megan Reed, is home on unpaid administrative leave. And I understand it's a personal matter which you can't discuss. But I do have one question. If she's home on unpaid administrative leave, who's the city treasurer at this point?
We have yet to get an answer on that.
That office, if I remember, is staffed with 3 people, the treasurer and 2 assistants. God forbid one of them gets sick or has to take some kind of vacation. I think that's awfully thin, and I think that needs to be resolved one way or the other very quickly. Though I am happy about the fact that the mayor will be able to bring in, even if it's only for 1 year, a finance director, because I think the administration needs all the help it can get on the financial side. I think, you know, we just come out of distressed status, and right now things are looking a little wobbly in some areas. We need to get a handle on this, you know. Late audits, no treasurer, you know. Somehow we got to get this all under control. Finally, any progress on resolving the union contracts?
As far as I'm aware, they're still in negotiations.
Okay, well, it's February 15th. 12.6% of the year is gone, and those contracts can have an impact on the 2022 budget. And the longer it drags on, the bigger the impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Norma Jeffries.
Good evening, Norma Jeffries, Scranton resident. And I'd like to start off first by thanking the citizens of Scranton on the successful food drive that we had at Naog Park. We ran it for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and we were able to supply 4 food pantries throughout the city. And when I say food pantries, these are facilities that are in churches. They're not the big facilities where people can come and pick up food on a particular day. These are facilities for people that need a box of cereal right now, peanut butter and jelly right now. So I just want to thank everyone that came and made our food drive a tremendous success. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the things that we come to City Council to talk to you about. Each of us has a hot button, something that we come here every week or maybe every month and we look for an update. We look for some information on that thing that's really something that we're passionate about. As Joan mentions the audit, as Marie, it's stormwater damage, and what do you think I'm mentioning? Traffic signs. So I was looking for an update, and I called down to the DPW looking for an update, and they sent me to the website. So I said, okay. And then they further told me that they don't handle it anymore, that any other updates I want will be on the website. And if I have questions, I need to go to the OECD department. I guess that's handling it from now on. So I did go to the website, and I pulled up multiple pages of information. I printed it off just so I could look at it and see what it is. And basically it starts off, it says street sign activity replacement report, first, second, and third quarter 2021. And it lists all just pages and pages of streets, and it says good. And I'm thinking, now it makes me wonder, I'm gonna have to get in my car and go check these out because I don't see any new street signs. I do see them in my neighborhood. I do see them in a few. But basically, I'm still seeing so many street signs that I cannot get people around the city. I'm working with this lady right now from the Philippines. You should see me trying to explain to her how to get from her area over to West Side. When we sat here last week and heard West Side talk about, NeighborWorks talk about the redevelopment over in West Side, I thought, are the street signs over in West Side going to be legible, that they're going to do all this fantastic work over there, which is good, and they're not going to have any street signs up? So I just want to read what's on the first page of the report online. And it goes on, Department of Public Works is constantly working to improve the safety for pedestrians and increase driver awareness. Making improvements to crosswalks makes it safer for our school students, elderly, residents, and drivers citywide. We're updating crosswalks. You know, it goes on talking about crosswalks. I'm thinking, well, where is it about my street signs? So I get down to the bottom, it says, our traffic department is working hard throughout the city to maintain and upgrade the city signs to make our city easy to navigate. I'm not sure about that these days. Being able to make out the lettering and adhere to safety signage is very important to this department, and we are constantly finding ways for improvement. The attachment below includes a list of improvements made for first and second quarter of 2021. And there must be 20 pages here that I printed off. And it says replacement date 2/25/2021, retro status good, Vine Street. I go up and down Vine Street a lot. And it just goes on talking about Olive Street, Vine Street, Pine Street, Cressler Court, North Washington. It just goes on and on and on. I don't see these improvements, and maybe I'm just not looking in the right spot, but I will be going down these streets and stopping and pulling over to see if they've been, but that's my hot button, is traffic signs.
Absolutely,
Okay?
and thank you for keeping us on our toes on that one. Like we said before, it will take a little time, it will take a little time to work our way through the city, but hopefully sooner than later.
Well, I've been back in town 4 years, and I'm still trying to
Thank you.
Update my life. Thank you.
Next on the list is Lee Morgan.
Good evening, Council. Lee Morgan. Well, I haven't been here for a couple weeks. I've had a conflict with my job in council meetings, but I haven't given up on the idea of the Home Rule Charter and petitioning the council to put it on the ballot. But, you know, I came here on the tail end of a discussion about cyber schools. And I just think that the discussion that's taking place here is quite twisted, in my opinion. Because cyber schools exist because when I was a child, parents determined that the public school system was doing an absolutely terrible job of educating its children, and it decided to look for avenues of change, and then cyber schools were created. Now, as a father who had children in this city, I did not allow my children to attend the Scranton School District because their product was beyond terrible. And it would have really stifled their ability to be successful in the future. So I removed my children and never, ever sent them to the Scranton School District. And it didn't have so much to do with all of the teachers, but, you know, as you watch the decisions being made at the administration building and politics in play, you just realize that somebody's got to get a clear mind and make changes in this city. And I would hope that parents petition their state senator and their state representatives not to change the way cyber schools are funded, because I think that definitely offers a leg up to parents, because the public school system is broken. And whether you, having been on the board at the school district or not, wants to accept that or not, that's up to you. But, you know, the troubling thing is that we've done a lot of terrible things, not just to the Scranton School District, but to the public school system across the Commonwealth. And it's all tore up from politics, in my opinion. And the children in this Commonwealth deserve a much better education, and they're just not getting it. And, you know, with saying that, I think that all the people in this country need to open their eyes and take a good look around, because they're responsible for everything that's taking place in our country, no matter what it is, good or bad. You know, as you see what the special investigator is doing in Washington, I'm gonna say that, you know, we named a street after Joe Biden and an exit off the expressway. And I think that before this investigation's done, and you find out now that, you know, news organizations hounded President Trump when he was president through his whole presidency, and now we find out that none of it, not one word of it was the truth. Not one single word was the truth. So we had a sitting president who was being spied on by the Democratic Party in the White House. That's what we've determined here. And then this council came forward and named an exit off the expressway and a street after Joseph Biden, whose presidency has just been a tragedy, to be blunt. And I just think it's time for the people to see in this city, because, you know, Mrs. Evans had the right idea when she put the Scranton Parking Authority into receivership, because that was the answer. And coming out of Act 47 the way we are, all tore up, and pretending that something's changed, I'd say to this council, open your eyes and look at this city. And when we start talking about taxpayers, they can't support the burden on their property, not just seniors, but anybody. I mean, it's time to be realistic here and understand that we need a change in the Home Rule Charter, but not only that, we need a change across the whole Commonwealth, because you cannot fund a modern society on property tax, because all you do is create poverty. And Democrats have been pimps of poverty my whole life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Tom Coyne. Learn something new every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Coyne, Manuka. Members of council, being a full moon tonight, I figured I would vary some different subjects here. Reading on striking down and moving off the agenda the treasurer issue. Considering that they will not be bringing that back, and there's an argument on whether or not city council has authority to actually do that. And the mayor's office is insisting that you do not have the power. I would have not taken that off the agenda, and I would have gone through and pushed it, and I would have voted it down. For no other reason to say, we are not going to take it down and just stop this argument. We're going to draw a line. I think that even though she's off, since this was on here, it deserved a vote to at least put a point out that city council is not going to acquiesce its power. I will be presenting council with a rebuttal to the letter from the parking authority. I just want to let you know it'll take a week or so to put that in place, just to push it forward to you as an informational. Back 20 years ago, the Pennsylvania Economic League put out guidance in their documents about charities, about pilot programs, about the need to increase the amount of funds coming into there because they saw an imbalance, a severe imbalance between what is being given by the charities, what the cost of the taxpayers were, and what the fair share was. They put guidance into that, I think it was back in the 80s. I'll have to go back and look at the documentation. But I also have a problem with Pell coming in for the new year after their service is done to teach the city and make those reports for the financial reports for the city. I would figure that in multiple decades that someone in city government would have combined with the Economic League to be able to teach city people how to make those reports, to make a sound physical structure once they left. That coming in after the city is out of receivership and say we're going to look at reports is again backwards. It should have been done that the city should have been taught how those reports were made so that they could have moved forward once leaving with the knowledge of how to make those reports. We are looking, the mayor did not increase taxes this year. A lot of people think, oh, that was wonderful. Well, that's because we were not allowed to make changes to the tax structure, because when we change from one form to another, it's legislatively banned that it has to be neutral, tax neutral. So they could not change or increase the tax this year purely for the reason it was not allowed by...
That tax has to be revenue neutral. It's not all taxes.
Okay, revenue neutral. I don't really think that passing it off this year was good, but I understand that there is going to be a continued tax burden of over 20% in the next 6 years, supposedly. Looking at donations, drug and alcohol rehab gave us $200. Private Citizen for K-9 gave us $1,000. Boys and Girls Club gave us $1,000. There was a personal donation for $5,000 for the firefighters. I understand that drug and rehab is a very important thing to the community, but I know that drug and rehab also hits a lot of insurance and gets a lot of money. I think $200, which is probably one insurance claim, is a little bit thin for an organization like that. Then I take a look at the University of Scranton, which I gave you a report from Providence where they actually touched and had it increased the same pilot program because it was an unfair burden. We had $200,000 presented this year by the University of Scranton. Looking at that, people who work outside of the city pay a 1% tax. The city of Scranton, the University of Scranton, just on its school and not any other assets, pays less than 0.1% in pilot taxes. I think they need to be asked and pushed to increase that donation to help the city get off its financial knees. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Ron Ellman.
Yes, hello, Council. The few statements that I'm going to make aren't accusations or assumptions, they're facts. So don't get excited. If you don't mind, I'd like to read this so I don't lose my chain of thought. For the last 2 weeks, I've watched the news, listened to the news, read the news, and not a word about the most vile, contemptible, foul presence infesting our city, drugs. I'd like to try to get away from this, but I don't want to miss any facts. I live in North Scranton, 2600 block, Maine. Since last summer, a drug cartel has been buying up property. They've bought 18 properties for $3,264,000. It's right here. They have done everything they can to conceal what is going on. First, a Florida company bought all this property up. Then they sold it to a California company, which plans to lease the different sections of this property to warehouse and grow and harvest marijuana. You know, if a dog can find a marijuana cigarette in a bus, you can imagine how tons of this marijuana is going to smell in the neighborhood. I have smelled it before in my younger days, you know. These people, they are doing everything they can to conceal what is going on right under our noses. This is very serious. As Mr. Powell, the attorney, our Attorney General here, has stated, with drugs comes crime. There's already one of these units up in Scott Township. This is primarily to feed New York City, is the assumption that I can make about that. They are everything except above board. They are secretive. I don't know how you can stop it now. It's a done deal. They bought the property. They plan to build a warehouse and grow right here under our noses. This is bad. This isn't going to end well for the city. Bidenville is going to be known as a drug capital, not a president's home, birthplace. Like I said, I don't know how the city can combat this, but how come For 2 weeks, I knew all this is going on, and there's no word. I don't blame council. I just say there's nothing in the paper. How come you don't know what's going on? Nobody seems to have any interest in this. It just doesn't, this is a very serious matter, having a drug cartel buy property right in the heart of the city. You know, we're getting all this garbage from New York City in one door, and it looks like we're going to be sending it back to them in the other door. I dropped this information on your hands. Now it's a hot potato for you guys. Something has to be done. Maybe Mr. Powell could get involved.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman.
There's the 18 properties and the money they spent. This has been going on since last summer. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ullman. We'll look into this for you. Next on the list, Al Young.
Albert Young, Scranton resident. Some of these remarks do not pertain to the folks sitting at the dais and so forth, just to be clear. After this, the Times article last week, I suppose this is not a surprise to some of you. It mystifies me as to how this city continues to run. First, we elect officials from federal, state, local levels. They have nothing to do with Scranton until it's election time. Everyone has one thing in mind: money and power. And they get it. Then we get most appointed positions, and they give two hoots about what's going to happen to the residents. But they come book smart and common sense dumb. I sit home watching council caucuses about the budget. When Mrs. Cipriani was asked about the garage situation, all I hear is the mayor sitting at this table respond with a very different opinion, not that of the owner, and the reply was not true. Also, she's never set foot in the area to assess the project of the garage or see how things were left on the temporary repair. Now, the litigation, the Times quoted me. But we left some facts out purposely. The city states that we have not lost any enjoyment of possessions or property. Boy, we ended up with 7.5 feet of water in our basement. We lost 2 furnaces, and one of them was only 5 years old at the time. 2 hot water heaters, 2 complete electrical systems, a complete laundry room, and a family room. All of my office equipment. All were paid for out of pocket, no flood insurance. My wife ended up with a fractured vertebrae. Good things we didn't sue for pain and suffering. City would be in deep doo-doo. Now, the city claims that the Political Subdivision Tort Claims Act was exceeded. The limit on that is $500,000 per claim. We have not even come close to that as yet. The city also claims that during the trial, we were making a profit by charging rent for the other side of my building. I think that's what landlords normally do. But it was okay for the solicitor at the trial to produce to council a year ago a bill for $150,000 plus for excess trial expense. 3 days? Come on. For that, it would take me 16 years to make a profit. Then look at the picture in the paper, that 14-ton piece of concrete that's sticking out of my property because of the temporary repair. Then we have a solicitor that is writing briefs and appeals from his office in Clark Summit using his staff. This is city business, not personal. And it's all on his personal stationery from work. Wrong. Shouldn't be allowed. We hope appointed solicitors should have some compassion, but not this group. Not one has allowed the contractor to finish the job of regrading and repaving the yards. Why? They might have to dig it up again. They don't want to have to pay for it. Duh. What are they going to do? Put the temporary or the permanent replacement on top of the temporary? Don't figure. I don't figure this. I have produced pictures to some of the people here at City Hall for the blocked culvert, but it apparently has fallen on closed eyes. I think the city thinks that if they make enough excuses and drag it out long enough, I'll go away. Guess again, I'm not going to go away. We have had water 10 times in the basement since the temporary repair was made. And since September of the past year, we called the fire company 5 different times to pump us out. But we have not lost any enjoyment of property. We don't sleep at night when there's a heavy rainstorm because we get water. And it's a lot of water. It's time the city elects people to take care of the residents, not just the downtown or west side. There are more sections of this city that need upgrading. I do not care whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. I appreciate that. And, we're all sympathetic to your, and I was told
But
that...
some of them aren't sympathetic enough.
We're trying to do what we could do from where we sit.
I understand that.
The goal is to get the remainder of the culvert cleaned as soon as possible. And as soon as I get an update on that, I will provide that to you, okay?
I'll probably be dead before this happens, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Would anyone else like to address council?
Good evening, Marie Schumacher. When I walked in tonight to the caucus, I thought I was at a school board meeting. We had legislators here, and I didn't hear one word about the percentage of tax-exempt properties we have. We had someone years ago who tried to take the tax of for Johnstown flood that's still being collected, and try to give that to some of the municipalities who have a heavy burden of non-tax exempt. Nothing. That should have been brought up. That should have been the very first thing you said, but that's only me. I want to thank the Times Tribune because they defined the city of Scranton last week on the February 10th, 2 sides. One side, well, the first thing that is important is the name of the street, where 4 of you and your one other colleague last year ignored the residents and business people of Spruce Street that came begging for you not to do it. And the 4 of you and one others voted to go ahead with this. And it was then that I knew that you don't care about the taxpayers and the residents. What you care about is what you guys want, and that is very, very painful. So that's what I see. That's on one side of the paper, and then we have here's on one side, and we have a lot downtown at Wyoming and Linden Street that has already taken $775,000, and the money continues being poured into that one. We had the company that had it, RSM, the city was supposed to do the remediation, and they didn't do it, so the city bought it. What the heck? It only cost $375,000. And then we have gotten another $400,000, and there's even more. So that's okay. But when it comes to residents, on the other side, what's the city doing? They're going after people who have been paying taxes, who have been, well, you just heard Mr. Young. How many times have they been flooded? It just is not right. And it continues. Of course, being able to go to bed at night and not worry about whether it's raining outside or not, because we have wonderful necessities. We need period light bulbs. We need night shades. We need raised colored intersections. We need to redo the handicap. They're already done. HUD already paid for them once. And yet we're going to pour all of this money into sprucing up 6 blocks where downtown is the money pit. Over the last 20 years, just since I came back to town, we poured, I didn't even look it up, but a lot of money in the 500 block of Lackawanna Avenue. And what has that done for the city? I don't think it's done a lot. And the neighborhoods, let them go. People who have problems with stormwater, there's room, just kick the can down. We'll get around to that. You people need to change your priorities. You need to start looking at what the taxpayers and residents need and not worrying about these frivolities of whoever comes up with these. And remember, you told us we were going to have public hearing on the RIP money. But here we are, spending it like...
Nothing is guaranteed to be spent there. That was a grant that was applied for in terms of Biden Street.
Time will tell. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will be scheduling a Recovery Act caucus in the month of March. Would anyone else like to address council?
Here I am. Like bad news, I never go away. Okay. We had a little tirade here about how we're all, and I do sympathize with Mr. Young. I agree with him entirely, but this is different. We have an article here that appeared yesterday in the paper. Now, the Democrats were just accusing, don't get insulted, but I'm not that in love with anybody all that much. Torrin Ecker, fiscal watchdog budget reports becomes political flashpoint in school funding fight. And the test scores don't improve, even if they give money. Well, I'll tell you what does improve, my property tax bill. And, you know, it's not that big, but it just keeps getting bigger every year. And we're short at $30 million with the school district. Who knows what all of this is costing the city, because they should also be pouring some more money into the city. in view of the fact that we're 36% tax exempt and growing at an exponential pace. It's really a shame. So, you know, they deduce that the school, we get the immigrants, we get I'm not complaining about anybody, okay. But let's be honest, because their comments are basically an insult. They think I'm at least, or just barely as smart as them. Well, I'm a lot smarter than that. The only thing they're good at is getting elected. Now, here I have, and if we can get it for the camera, oh, excuse me, redistricting. Now, we're being all split up every which way. We're getting a representative from out in Stroudsburg or something, and here's the original. Now, if you did it in a straight line, it would eliminate most gerrymandering, okay? PA straight line. And no more districts looking like a bowl of Lucky Charms breakfast cereal. They're always after me, Lucky Charms. Just like the commercial said. They're all after my Lucky Charms. And I know what they're doing. They're trying to split Scranton up. Personally, I don't want Mario Scavello or Dan Musa. He voted against seating Joe Biden on the 6th of January. He's unacceptable as an American, period. And getting to the anti-vax people, there's over 2,000 people a day dying from that. And they equate that with some kind of freedom. You have the right to go out and infect somebody else or crow or drive somebody else's insurance, because we all insure each other. Health insurance is going up. Up and up and up and up and up every year. We don't need 25% of the people in the hospital in intensive care as a COVID victim because they didn't want to vaccinate or just carelessly expose somebody else. You know, we just had a guy in here crowing and blaming the Democrat Party for everything. Well, we blame for a couple things, but you know, I told him out front that marijuana should be considered, which was under Carter 45 years ago. Jimmy Carter wanted to decriminalize it, and it went nowhere. He used it as a license to slander me all over town. So take a hike, buddy. You're not my friend. Don't walk up to me, and you're probably unvaccinated. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Would anyone else like to address council? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. King, do you have any motions or comments?
I do not.
Mr. Schuster, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, I do. So I would have liked to have spoken about this in caucus, but we didn't get a chance to speak about it. But tonight I would like to make a motion for council to direct Solicitor Gallagher to write an ordinance to amend pertinent sections of the city code to enumerate and ensure that all department directors and bureau directors, as the city administration has referred to them, are appointed by the mayor, would advice and consent from council. And this would also include the city treasurer.
Second.
We had a motion and second on the motion. On the question?
On the question, 3 words, advice and consent. It's our role, it's our responsibility. It's unfortunate we have to go this route, but we have to fight. So I'll be definitely voting yes for this motion.
Anyone else on the question?
On the question, I do believe that the code needs to be clarified from reading it. I mean, the changes and in titles, I think that we need to do some work there, so I'll be voting in favor of this motion.
Anyone else on the question?
I would just like to say, it's my understanding that there's a meeting later this week to discuss the situation. Is that correct, or?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to vote for this motion. However, I'm hopeful that that meeting can help resolve the situation, that it can result in an understanding that we do have the authority to approve these positions. But if it doesn't result in that, I think that we need to take some action to ensure that our authority as legislators is not just violated. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the question, I would agree to the same. A little while ago, I did send an email about receiving some of the resumes of the appointments that were sent down. So tonight, I'd ask Mr. Voldenberg if you would please send again correspondence to the administration to get the resume of the new appointment for an HR director.
I will, Mr. Schuster.
Thank you.
Thank you. On the question, I agree. We do need to make some, improvements to our administrative code. And I am hopeful that, we could come to a resolution with the administration regarding that appointment issue. There are other things we need to address in the administrative code, and we're going to do that in due time. But at the same time, we can't get bogged down in this nonsense of the, who gets, what council's advice and consent role is. Because I think we do have an important advice and consent role. I think we've seen that in the last week. And I'm hopeful that we could come to an agreement, with the administration so that we could put this aside and actually concentrate on the things that matter to our taxpayers, such as stormwater, such as going after, our nonprofits, and so on. So I will be supporting this motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays? The ayes have it, and so moved. Anything else?
That's all.
Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, I have a couple. The first thing was a complaint that I received that I wanted to send along. Not sure if both code enforcement and SPD would need to be involved with this one, but it's with regards to some of the residents placing cones and garbage cans in parking spots on the street. And it's not just happening when there's snowy weather, which is when we often see an increase in that occurrence, but this has been a consistent problem for a while now that the resident is complaining about. So he's noticed it along some areas of Pine Street nearby Prescott, and then also on Prescott on the 700 block. I believe the address was 718 Prescott Avenue. So if we could have someone go to check out those locations, it's not fair to other people to be trying to save a spot on the street. It's not your spot. I myself don't have any parking, so I park on the street, and it's not always convenient. We have a bar nearby, and sometimes on the weekends it gets crowded, but you know what, we find a spot, and then if something opens up later on, we move it there. So that's just what you have to do. You take the chance that someone else may park there. So I'd like to make sure that is enforced. And the other thing that I want to bring up, someone had mentioned last week with regards to our public health coordinator, Dr. Saxena. I am interested in receiving updates on what she has been doing, and so I plan on meeting with her to just have a discussion, and I will report back after that meeting to let you all know what is going on within that office and that position. And if any other council members are interested in that, they're more than welcome to join, as long as we keep it to 2 people. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then lastly, I'm not sure if other council members have had a chance to do this yet, but I was really happy to have gained access to OpenGov, and we had someone from IT go through training to do that, and now it'll be a lot easier for us to take a look at specific addresses and see what complaints there might be, especially with regards to code enforcement. I think that's where it'll be most useful for us as council members, and will help, I think, close the loops quicker when we do receive complaints. That's all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAndrew, do you have any motions or comments?
I do. I have a few comments. So I'd like to take a moment to explain my concern regarding Mayor Cognetti's recent actions that are shrouded in secrecy and a complete lack of transparency. The city solicitor's memo from January 31st, which states the mayor refuses to send council legislation approving cabinet head appointments, is shocking. I served with Mayor Cognetti when she was on the school board, and she constantly preached transparency. It seems to me that within the last few weeks, the mayor has completely reversed course and would rather do business and hire people, cabinet members, in important positions without council's input. What's even more concerning is the recent news that the city treasurer, which the mayor refused to send to council for approval, as always was, or has been done in the past, is now on non-paid administrative leave. The mayor will not discuss anything further, which is absolutely outrageous. Council and the public deserve an answer as to what is going on with the city treasurer. Is this the reason the mayor was refusing to now send down these appointments to council? It just doesn't, I don't like the looks of this. As I stated last week, the Cognetti cabinet has been a revolving door. Now more than ever, the council's role as a watchdog on behalf of the citizens is of utmost importance. Council has always been the check and balance to our strong mayor form of government. It is unfortunate that the mayor has chosen this path of secrecy. I will not and cannot stand for that. Something as simple as an interview or a sorely needed vetting process for new hires would have flushed this out, the issue we're dealing with now. So I have three questions, Mr. Voldenberg, if you can please send to administration. Why is the treasurer on unpaid administrative leave? And how long will this leave last for? I know it's a personnel issue, but this is about the position, all right? Who is filling the duties of the treasurer currently? Number three, how many employees are currently working in the Treasury full-time? And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have two quick things. Mr. Voldenberg, if everyone remembers, we contracted out with Portnoy Law and Associates to collect delinquent refuse from 2020 going back. So I would just like an update from Portnoy on what they were able to collect to date. Some sort of report, because it included about $16 or so million, and I just want to see how much they've collected to date. We haven't gotten an update from them. So would you be able to request that, please?
I will, sir.
And also, I spoke with a resident today on Birch Street, and they're having some issues with American Water Company just up from the 200 block where they were doing so I do have to check and see if that's an actual water company project, or if it's the sewer portion of the water company's project. And they've also complained about increased truck traffic there. I think that might have initially been a result of the work that American Water was doing on Mattis. So if they were coming off the expressway there, instead of taking the right because Mattis was closed, they take the left, go down Cedar Ave, and then take a right on Birch. But there has been increased truck traffic there. So we're going to look into that as well. And that's all I have tonight. Mr. Voldenberg?
5B for introduction, an ordinance establishing regulations and restrictions for the location and use of lots, land, buildings, and other structures, the height, number of stories, and size and bulk of buildings and structures, the density of population, off-street parking, and similar accessory regulations in the city of Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, and for said purposes, dividing the city of Scranton into districts and establishing the boundaries thereof, prescribing certain uniform regulations for each such district, and providing for administrative enforcement and amendment of its provisions in accordance with the Pennsylvania Municipal Municipalities Planning Code 53 PS Section 10101 et sec as amended.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question? On the question, just in terms of the process that council's going to use here, we're going to, this requires 3 readings, so we'll introduce it tonight. We'll read it in 6th order next week. We will then immediately table it. The plan is, to hold a public hearing on March 1st at 5 p.m. Instead of 5:45 to give residents enough time to come out and, express their opinions related to the zoning code. And then we'll take it from there. It's not like we're immediately going to bring it off the table. If we were to amend it in any way, there's a process we have to follow then, where we send it back to the County Planning Commission for 30 days for review, then it has to go back in front of the City Planning Commission before then we would be able to take a final vote. So just so everyone's aware on, that this is going to be a lengthier process than most legislation we require to have a public hearing on. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
6th order, no business at this time. 7th order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 13, 2022, appointment of Thomas F. Carroll, 1610 Schlager Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18504, to the position of Superintendent of Police for the City of Scranton, effective January 25th, 2022.
As the chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I'd like to thank Chief Nemeka for his time as police chief, and I'd like to congratulate and wish well the new police chief, Chief Carroll.
Anyone else on the question? I would also like to just thank Chief Nemeka for his service as police chief and his continued service in the department, and I also would like to wish Chief Carroll the best of luck moving forward. Anyone else?
Yes, I'll echo that. Thank you to Chief Nemeka. And I look forward to working with Chief Carroll.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, previously removed from the agenda. 7C, for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption, Resolution Number 15, 2022, amending file of the Council Number 8, 2022, an ordinance entitled authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract between the City of Scranton and Riley Associates to provide consulting engineering services, to change the form of legislation from an ordinance to a resolution, and to authorize the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract between the City of Scranton and Riley Associates to provide consulting engineering services.
What is the recommendation for the chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chairman of the Committee on Public Works, I recommend passage of item 7C, final passage.
Second?
On the question?
I would just like to say that initially, I had some questions concerning this, and all of our questions have been answered, and therefore, I will be supporting that this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, I pretty much have the same thing to report. I asked for 3 weeks of the financial disclosure with donations, and I wasn't going to vote. I was going to vote no tonight, but we finally got it. So I want to report out that I did get it. It just required a few weeks of asking.
And just on that point, Mr. Voldenberg, can we put the disclosure on the agenda in third order for next week?
I will, Mr. Donahue.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
Eighth order, 8A, previously removed from the agenda.
If there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Visit ectv.network for the ECTV program schedule, city and county meeting rebroadcasts, and more. ECTV, Electric City Television, live municipal broadcasts on Comcast, Channel 19.